Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Adam Interviews, where we are talking to folks in our community doing things of note. Very exciting guest right now. Our universities are chock full of folks doing incredible work that will likely influence the world, will influence where we go, and in this case, how we age. Vera Gorbanova has been with the University of Rochester for around 2 decades now, and she joins us now via Zoom. Vera, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
You're very welcome.
So we're going to talk about the study that's about to take place, but I want to set the scene because I think people need to understand how much work you've done in this world of aging. And the study is gonna have to do with an HIV drug and all of that, but I wanna go back a few years. The New York Times did a wonderful piece on you and your work with, is it called bowhead whales? Is that how you pronounce the name?
Yes.
Yeah, so bowhead whales, apparently they can live for, like, over 100 years. They're thinking maybe now close to 300 years, and the question is, how could they do this, especially in such terrifyingly cold waters, right near Alaska? And, Vera and her husband, who's also an academic partner in all of this, basically figured out, what was going on in their cells. A lot of aging has to do with, cell replication and sometimes too much replication, which means cancer. Before we get into the specifics of that study and the one you're about to run, why don't you give us an idea of where we are when it comes to aging, in science and where we're going as a species?
Well, it is becoming more and more clear that aging is the root cause of major diseases that affect mankind. As we get older, the incidence of diseases such as cancer, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, everything goes up almost exponentially. So instead of treating each disease individually, our approach is to try to manipulate aging and this way make people healthier because this way we are addressing the root cause. And right now, we are at this moment of time where interventions to slow down aging and improve health are actually becoming a reality. Some interventions showed promise in preclinical studies, and we are at this point where we are starting to translate this now into the clinic and starting first clinical trials.
This is no longer sci-fi is what you're saying, is that this is becoming something of a reality.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, we are not talking about immortality or anything like that. We are talking about adding some health to people's last years so people can live into their 90s, maybe 100s in good health. So, this is our goal.
Yeah, and you uh, answered my next question, and not even a question, but the point is having read, articles on your work and actually a neighbor that I had years ago out in Colorado at, Colorado State University, he was working on aging as well, and he kinda cleared that up for me, is that when you think about the science of aging and research into aging, it's not to extend the human life to 200, at least not now, it's mainly to make life healthier because when we talk about aging, it's, um, I don't wanna be morbid in my terminology here, but it's about the deterioration of the human body and how, if you can prevent that, folks can maybe live a little bit longer, but live better. And why don't we talk about when we talk about cells, what is it about what happens to cells that creates sometimes suffering and perhaps terminal illnesses in people? What happens?
Yes, so there are many processes. Aging is a very complicated process. Things deteriorate on multiple levels. But some of the drivers lie like in the center of our cells, in our DNA, in the nucleus, and also in the way how DNA is organized. So what happens, DNA starts to accumulate mutations. Many people heard about that. But in addition, what our work of the past several years has demonstrated that also the way DNA is organized in the nucleus becomes messed up. And that has very bad consequences because there are some areas of our DNA that we want to be silent. And this is so-called dark genome or like parasites within our genome. So it's kind of a scary thought that there are parasites within our DNA. And these parasites are called transposons. So these transposons they came from viruses. They're ancient viruses that invaded our cells millions of years ago and took residence within our DNA. And they're silent for the most part, but when they get older, because DNA becomes a bit disorganized, so these silencing mechanisms start to fail and transposons become active. And what happens when they become active, even though they're still part of us, our DNA, but our cells think that they are infected by a virus. And our cells start to mount inflammatory response, trying to kill this virus, which doesn't really exist, but that causes so-called sterile inflammation. Our cells think they are infected. And inflammation is a root cause of many diseases. It's linked to diabetes, to atherosclerosis. Everywhere in aged body, we find increased inflammation. So this is what this project will target. How can we keep these parasites silent and prevent them from triggering this inflammatory response?
Yeah. How often I've done enough reports with doctors and researchers, a lot of it is trying to stop the body from doing harm to itself, whether it's autoimmune diseases or in this case, trying to stop the body from killing off cells or things that don't need to be killed off. And so why don't we talk about the bowhead study first from these whales? What was it about their cells that allowed them what was it, to replicate, but replicate healthy? It's one thing to replicate, but if you replicate too fast, you got cancer. What was it about their replication that didn't really manifest or create any faulty cells or DNA?
Well, what we discovered is that whale cells were very good at not making mistakes, avoiding mutations. We just talked about mutations as being one of the drivers of aging. And whale is just extremely accurate at that. They do not accumulate mutations as fast as human cells or cells of short-lived species. For example, mouse cells accumulate a lot of mutations as they divide, but whale cells very accurate. And even if we induce DNA break, they repair it very faithfully. So that allows them to avoid cancer because cancer is also caused by mutations, and probably allows these animals to avoid age-related deterioration and live up to 200 years. So that's currently the maximum lifespan, the documented maximum lifespan for the bowhead whale, 200 years, which is twice as long as human lifespan.
Yeah, I think I was in the article. It was fascinating because you had grandkids saying that they know their grandfather spotted the same whale that they're spotting. It's just remarkable. Did any treatment come out of that yet? I know in the world of science, it was not all that long ago. Because I asked that because what you're about to study is, the treatment could already be out there. Has there been any type of transition or translation from that research to human medicine?
We are actively researching it. So the bowhead whale study only came out just several weeks ago.
Yeah.
So you need to give us a little bit more time, but
There you go.
have some ideas, and we are definitely pursuing the translation to see how humans can benefit from these evolutionary inventions in the long-lived organism.
Yeah, the fact that we can learn something from the mole rat, which I now know can live 30 years, which is spooky. And then what you're doing now, by the way, I want to talk about in just one moment. I'm going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Vera Gorbanova talking with us, U of R professor studying aging with her team over at the University of Rochester. And they are starting a new trial, and it's a new research study, if you will. And basically, it's going to be looking at one of the treatments for HIV and how it can be potentially applied to aging. And as we noted in the previous portion of this interview, a lot of aging has to do with how cells act and how our body treats cells. Do they kill them off prematurely? Do they let them replicate when they shouldn't be replicating? What is it about, Vera, about the HIV treatment that's already out there that could potentially help people age with more health than they have been?
Yeah, that is fascinating. So, as we discussed before the break, we have these virus-like parasites within our DNA. They actually make up almost 40% of our genome, these remnant sequences of viruses that in evolutionary past became part of our DNA. They maybe infected our cells and then just integrated in our DNA, and now they're part of it. And usually they just sit quiet and do not create problem. But when we get older, they can become activated, and they do become activated in all of us. And then the cell responds to it as if it's infected, and it triggers inflammation. So what's interesting about these transposons is for them to trigger this inflammatory response, they encode an enzyme called reverse transcriptase. And this enzyme is similar to the enzyme in viruses. Well, they are viruses in the past, after all. So some of the drugs that were developed to treat viruses such as HIV can also inhibit these transposons. So like we don't, we don't need to be infected by HIV, but all of us have these ancient viruses in our DNA that carry a similar enzyme that now can be targeted by the drugs. Not all HIV drugs, but there is a specific subclass that can also work on transposons. So what our research has shown in preclinical models is that sometimes if we treat the cells with these type of drug, we see reduction of inflammation because it doesn't allow transposons to produce this DNA in the cytoplasm of the cell that triggers into inflammatory response. So what we would like to do now, and this is what the grant from ARPA-H is going to support, in the first phase, we will treat mice with this drug, and we will measure frailty of the mice. We will observe how they age. And then, after we evaluate it in mice, then we will give the drug to healthy older adults and monitor their intrinsic capacity, their physiological blood tests, and see how people age. And then we will see whether the drug slowed down the aging process and reduced inflammation in these people. So that is how HIV drug may actually target more than HIV. It can target the driver of aging.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We see this in medicine all the time where one thing goes to treat one thing and then can treat another. So because we're not talking about immortality, we're not going to have 150-year-old humans out of this one thing necessarily. What would the benefit look like if this were to be effective?
Uh, the benefits of what we would expect, if everything goes well, um, is to see improvements in multiple parameters of aging, because what transposon cause, they cause inflammation. And inflammation triggers atherosclerosis, metabolic syndrome, it triggers neurodegeneration. There is inflammatory component in Alzheimer's disease. So we expect to see improvement in multiple facets of aging process in these people. So again, we don't know what the effect size will be, how great the improvement. So these are all the questions that the study will answer. But overall, we expect people to slow down their aging rate.
I don't know if I'm asking you to speak outside of your scope now, but I remember reading Witches of Eastwick by John Updike, and they talked in the book, I think it was an aside about and this is in the 70s or 80s, I can't remember when Updike wrote it, but talking about the um, deleterious effects of inflammation. And, you think about drinking and other things that might cause inflammation. I mean, is this something that we should think about as we age, other things that can cause inflammation, like alcohol or various whether it's stress. I don't know. I mean, are these things that we should be thinking about now that we know the potential impact of inflammation, or is this a different type of inflammation that you're talking about?
Well, there are many different types of inflammation, and you are correct. There are some environmental exposures that can promote inflammation, and the dietary factors, which many of them we can control. But the inflammation that we are going to address, it comes from within our cells. So it's very difficult to modify it unless we really specifically target the cause of this inflammation. And this is what we are hoping to achieve, to slow down this intrinsic trigger of inflammation.
Of course, we see it with various drugs where there might be some guess as to what outside effect it might have beyond what it was created for. I'm guessing that those in the research study and those in the medical field would say, listen, don't go try and go obtain um, this HIV drug and expect to live 150 years because I kind of know how some human minds think. This is you're not just studying it for its efficacy right now, but also its safety.
Yes, yes, of course, it's very important, and this will be a randomized placebo-controlled trial of the very high standards. So if we see positive signal, it will be very important and very high level of evidence. The drug has been previously tested for safety, so we do not expect to see, big issues with it. The most important question that we are going to address: does it slow generalized aging in healthy people?
That's interesting. Where do you see, because you're so in the community, when it comes to longevity? So we've been mainly talking about health and using the slowing of aging to really just talk about increasing the healthiness of a human body as it ages. Do you foresee longevity, these long-lived type animal studies and whatnot in humans over the next 100 years? Do you see us living longer?
Yes, I of course hope so, that we will live longer and healthier. I don't want to say how much longer. Currently, the limit, the human maximum lifespan that has been documented is 120 years. People did not outlive this threshold, and I don't know if they will. But if we could make everyone live to 120 in good health, that that is the goal of my life.
What inspired that to you? Because you do seem so passionate about it. Was there, a class or a person or a story that really got to you and put you on this path?
Well, I was initially fascinated by aging process just as a fundamental part of life because all living organisms age, and it is a very complicated process. It's even more complicated than development because development is very structured while aging is more stochastic. So it's a very difficult biological problem, and I wanted to tackle it. But then just seeing human suffering and how much misery aging can bring to people, that really motivates me to come up with solutions.
That's fascinating. By the way, this is going to start, can folks locally sign up for this? I think it was, I was reading 60 to 65 years old. Is this something that people can be prepared to participate in?
Yes, yes, when time comes, we will be putting ads and enrolling people from our community, and the clinical part of study will be coordinated by my colleague Kathy Hefner at the medical school. So yes, it will happen.
How often do you keep in touch? Because as I noted, I had a friend over at Colorado State University. I think he's moved on since then. Is this a burgeoning part of academia? Has it been big, and I just haven't really seen it? Where does it stand as an industry, if you will?
Well, aging research has really gone through a growth spurt. The field is growing, and first it started, of course, from making basic science discoveries and showing that aging can actually be manipulated in model organisms in the laboratory. We can make flies or mice live longer. And now we are at this point where we are moving it to human clinical trials. So the field is a very exciting place to be. It's a big field and very rapidly developing.
And lastly, before I let you go here, U of R, you've been there for a long time. What do you think about working in this particular institution?
Well, it is wonderful. It is very, very collaborative atmosphere, very collegial, and we get a lot of support for our work, and we made it a center famous for aging research.
That's wonderful. Well, best of luck to you and your husband and academic partner and your entire team.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can all benefit from this, and it's very exciting. As you noted, aging can be very rough, and if you can alleviate some of that suffering, it will be a welcome addition to the human experience. So, Vera, we wish you the best in your work, and I want to thank you personally for coming on and talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, so Vera Gorbanova talking with us. She is extraordinarily busy, and get ready to learn more about this. We're at the starting line of this study. So we are going to be following this as it goes along. And I want to thank the folks over at U of R for making this interview happen. And thank you, everyone out there, for joining us for another edition of Adam Interviews. Please tell your friends and family about the Rochester First app. You can get these interviews every weeknight along with so much more content. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 on demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.